to another One Thing. I'm here, as always, joined by the lovely Kim and Jody from ePayments, a fresh approach to payments. Today we have a spectacular guest with the coolest name that I think that we've ever had on the podcast. Jody, can you introduce our guest?
Absolutely. I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Diego Ventura. Diego is an engineer. He's a well-known speaker. He is the founder of a really innovative, cool company that does artificial intelligence, and he also is a knight. One thing I've never got to say before introducing someone. So with that being said, Diego, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Wow, with that introduction, where am I going from here?
A knight.
All true.
Our knight in shining armor.
All true. Diego Ventura. So in English, I think Diego translates to James. That's what they told me. Ventura in Spanish translates to wind. So James Wind, maybe.
I like it.
But yeah, no, I'm from Italy. I came here when I was 25 years old because of love. My wife is American. She's essentially from California. So she was in the Air Force. So today is Veterans Day. Yes. So she was in the Air Force. She got stationed in Italy, and that's how we met. It was a great to meet her. It was really two nationality, two cultures coming together. It was really a very happy time, and we always remember those days. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm gonna ask my one thing, just because I think we already got a good idea of where I'm going with my question. You have been incredibly successful throughout your career, and you also have done so many things. We threw out the knight title, and you just breezed right over it. And I was gonna say, one thing I always think about you, I always watch other leaders and how they interact with their people and carry themselves, and you are incredibly humble. That is one thing when I think of you. You're a good human and a really humble person. What's the one thing you could share with our viewers about humility and what you've learned about humility?
Yeah. Bring in the horse. My horse is waiting outside the office. Yes, being humble is what really sets me apart. Jody. No, well, you know about being humble, but yeah, no, the whole night thing was, you know, we did something for the foreigner minister of Italy, and you know, I was awarded this title, and I'm very grateful. It's not something I can really talk much about exactly what we did, but you know, it was something good, and I'm glad they recognized that.
So he can talk about bodies and trunks, and he can talk about bringing in horse, but this is over the line.
Yeah, this is where, you know, when it comes to good things. Now, thank you guys for bringing it up. Really gracious of you. And it's not that I don't want to talk about it, but you know,
on Veterans Day.
But my question, I work in tech and I work in also comedy. Both of them, I am always ahead of the curve. So I am, whether it be where I'm performing in front of an audience and they don't get it, and I'm like, it's going to be funny in 5 years. Or I'm working in technology and I'm trying to move people. I was just explaining that I have VR. I've been a big proponent of that for years, but it's getting people on board. I had no idea that your AI or your technology goes back to 2000, if not prior.
Yep.
How have you been able to get people on board with AI 20 years ago? Like, that is like a foreign concept. That is so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you how the story happened, but and Neil, I don't for a moment think that I got anybody on board. I mean, there are such big dynamics that had to happen to be at the point where we are right now. But I'll tell you the little story. So the little story is like this. It's you have a good phrase in English, and probably you're going to mess it up, but something like it's the mother of invention, or necessity is the mother of invention, right? Okay. So I mentioned the two companies. So the first company, Video Mail Video Conferencing Systems, I really love that little company that we did, first of all, because we bootstrapped it without investing in money. So that was very successful. And then we did a deal. It was a really good deal with Logitech. And you are all very young, but if you happen to remember from the pictures that you look at from old magazine, the golf ball looking like video cameras, you know, I
remember those.
Yeah, so we got a deal with Logitech where most of those had our software in it. So our software video control got packaged with that particular camera, and that was a very lucrative deal that we did with Logitech. So thank you, Logitech. But as part of the deal, we were supposed to provide technical support, right? And we were getting like 250,000 new customers every quarter, right? I mean, for us, that was a big number. And we were responsible as part of the deal as doing the support. So fortunately, the software was working very well. So no problem. We had that tackle. But it was at that point that I said, look, how can we automate some of the most frequently asked questions? How can we make that happen? And then I thought about, I've always been passionate since the day in schools about artificial intelligence, because believe it or not, there was a big artificial intelligence push in the 80s, right? So in school, we studied about expert system, natural language processor, even back then. So I said, why don't we create a virtual assistant, an expert system that can answer those questions automatically? You know, at that point, the web was coming up, the speed wasn't very high, there were all these things, but the bottom line is I said, look, I can put this together, and not only we put it together for us, but then I was able to sell it to another company in the space, Kensington. And so with that in mind, I said, maybe there is a bigger opportunity here. Let me go to some investor and see what they think. So when things really change, and this is why we had nothing to do with it. I mean, we were in that space for a long time, but with nothing to do in the sense we possibly had something to do, but you know, these big changes happen because there are really big forces at play. I think the biggest force that made chatbots and virtual assistant popular were things like the fact that at a certain point, I remember in 2016, the number of instant messaging interactions surpassed the number of views on website or the typical way of gathering information. And what's particular about that is the instant messaging interaction. The paradigm is the same one, is the same paradigm of the virtual assistant, because you chat with the chatbot just like you chat with an instant messaging. And when that happened, and a lot of people started thinking about interacting and getting information by chatting with a friend, then it was easier to say, look, certain information you can actually gather from an artificial intelligence.
So that will bring me to my question. My one thing is, like, for somebody explaining a new tech, what's the one thing you would say that people, to get people on that track to start understanding this is going to be chatbots, or these AI systems are going to be the way of the future?
Yeah, you know, and keep in mind that back then, even I didn't know that things would have ended up where they are ending up right now, right? But I think what I found always very helpful in this situation is to try to compare what you have to something that already exists. So for example, in this journey, probably around the 2010, so we couldn't really use this before then, but around the 2010, live chat became very important, right? Regular live chat with humans. So when we were explaining what we were doing, we would say, oh, you know what we were doing? You know, when you're chatting with a friend, same thing, but instead of chatting with a friend, you're chatting with an artificial intelligence. And people will start saying, oh, I got it. So this idea of taking an existing paradigm, something that everybody can relate to, and making reference to that, is one of the weapons that you can use, one of the tools that you can use to to convey what you're doing, even if the technology is very new. And in language nomenclature.
That is so cool.
And that brings me to my question and kind of where I was going with this. So it's so funny because I know that you had given a talk saying connecting people and computers through human language. And when I started even doing research, when we started working with you, I was looking up, like, even WALL-E came up, the movie, and Steven Spielberg's AI intelligence. And I was laughing because some of the quotes were, WALL-E has a glitch. He's developed a personality, you know?
Absolutely.
So, and even in Steven Spielberg's movie, where they were talking about the robot child that can love and imprint on a parent, it fills a great human need. We're capable of having complex thoughts, but lacking emotion. So when you're developing some of these chatbots, and you're doing it in healthcare too, a lot of it in healthcare, where people are concerned, people have a lot of emotion around that too. Do you put that human element, like, are you thinking, because I know you're a brilliant engineer, but I also think we work with a lot of engineers, you're one of the most warm and just engaging people that I've met in a while. And I'm just wondering, do you think about that human engagement and emotion when you're creating these virtual assistants and chatbots?
Yeah, Kimberly, I'm the worst person to do that, but that is a very important task. So that part of the design, it's not in my personality. I'm like my father. My father was a general in the Italian army. He is a general. Well, he's retired now, but he was a general. And he's like, we have phone conversation, and he's okay. I'm seeing you there, and 1,300 hours. This is the location. Boom! In 2 minutes we are done. Right? I'm not the baroque thinking about how something is built. So it's important to learn your limitation. Right? This is not me. But I have a great team here that can help me exactly with that, because that's very important. And I'll give you just a couple of specific examples. There were conversations that we're having with our customers. For example, are we naming the virtual assistant, Albert or whatever else? Are we going to use an avatar? And is the avatar going to be a graphical representation of a robot or an actual little picture of a person? And there are all these dynamics that have an effect. And you could see it underlines what you were saying, Kimberly, because you could see that the difference in how people would communicate with the virtual assistant depending on what we would be using, right? Like we noticed that, for example, with a robotic avatar, with no avatar, the interaction was very much search-like, 2 words to explain a concept and trying to get something from the virtual assistant. You start putting an avatar that is not a picture of a person, you now see the length of the query becoming longer, and you see even the composition of the phrase was more like a phrase that you would use when engaging a human. Then we would change the avatar to be a little picture of a person, right? Just to try that. And then you would see longer phrases, but even the emotional commitment where people would ask the virtual assistant, I should have kept those, the virtual assistant out for dates, right? So it's really interesting. There is an entire science about the design of this virtual assistant. And right now we're talking about just the UI design. I know that you were making reference also to the actual style of the conversation, because correct. I can say, please select between these 3 options, or I can say, would you like ice cream, strawberry ice cream, would you like chocolate ice cream, etc., much more conversationally. And so each of these elements influences the experience for the end user.
Yeah, because I think it's all connected. It's like what even Neil was saying, people don't understand, and there's a distrust around things they don't understand. But when they understand and they maybe equate it with speaking with a human, or, they're going on and they're asking questions, that is such an interesting point, that the dialogue got longer, and just the fact that it's called Albert instead of, chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So after all these experiences and all this implementation, I'm becoming partial, and also because I'm this practical, pragmatic, unsophisticated guy, I'm very partial towards being super upfront with people and letting them know, look, you're not chatting with a person, you're chatting with an artificial intelligence, number one. Number two, setting the expectation. And then, look, I want to take advantage of the best capability of a virtual assistant in this conversation, and I don't want to penalize the virtual assistant to make him look more human. I'd rather say, look, this is not a human, this is a virtual assistant, and when it's going to provide you some option to choose from, it's going to give you a list, because that's the most convenient way of letting you choose between 5 options, rather than with a very baroque style of language telling you, would you like the ice cream of a certain type, or you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but that's me, in part supported by evidence of the implementation that we have done. Yeah.
I like it. I like the idea of, like, when you're sending somebody down a chatbot, like a series of paths or a series of forks, it's like a series of gates or a series of doors that you're moving somebody down. And it's like, do you put a face on the door? Like, why would I do that? It makes it more human looking. Like,
Yeah.
that's not necessary. You don't have to do that.
I think, and this is what I always try to communicate to the team. We want to be good at the really hard stuff. There is, everybody talks about artificial intelligence and how, it can be dangerous, and there are a lot of, potential problem with it, et cetera, et cetera. But there is so much work that still needs to be done. Most of the virtual assistant and chatbots out there are primarily information retrievers, right? There isn't, from a cognitive perspective, unless something is super scripted and we still are a little bit far away from that, right? I always make this example. I can say, with our technology, I can train a virtual assistant by just ingesting a document and say that the document contains information about when Leonardo da Vinci was born and when Giotto was born. I go to the virtual assistant, I train it by ingesting the document very easily. I go to the virtual assistant and ask, hey, when was Leonardo da Vinci born? Right away, boom, the virtual assistant can tell me. When was Giotto born? Boom, I get it right away. But if I say, who was born first, Leonardo da Vinci or Giotto, that is a cognitive capability that requires a computation. And most of the technology out there is not going to be able to do that. It is not going to be able to do that if you're setting as your goal that to train the virtual assistant, all you can do is ingest a document, right? It can be done in other ways, but the standard for us is no, we want to make it super simple and get virtual assistant trained by just ingesting a document. So, yeah.
Well, so with all of that, where do you see the future of AI going?
Well, I think, Kimberly, that's where, my answer is going to be, from a technology perspective, that way, meaning, how can we make these things really more, with more cognitive capabilities? So cognitive capability would include computation, being able to compare things, being able to summarize. Like, what if I want to, a virtual assistant to ingest a document and really give me a summary that is not just a cut-out piece of what's in that document, but it's really, what is that document about? I mean, those are tough things to do, but those are very valuable things to do. So from a technology perspective, I see that. From a just industry and how can they make our life together, I've been talking about this for some time. And it's this idea, I mean, just very practically, imagine that you go to your home and, you have your mobile phone and the first thing that you want to do, you want to make sure that your virtual assistant, you have this Uber virtual assistant, the Super Albert, that knows about your environment. And so the way to teach you about the environment is to bump on object. And so you can use different type of technology, right? Near field communication tags or others, so that I do this, oh, now it knows I have this computer and that I have an HP Pavilion, whatever the model is. I do this and it knows that I have a certain refrigerator. I do this and it knows I have a certain TV. And so number one, virtual assistant for each of these items. Number two, the virtual assistant are connected together, so I can go to Super Albert and I can say, look, the TV skipped some recording, and it knows that the TV is using a Comcast service and there was an outage. You see, it's really this butler, scenario where our lives are easier, because if my refrigerator stopped working, I have something that I can just scan a QR code and tells me what's going on with that. So I hope I answered your question. One was the type of technologies, and the other one, the type of human experience. Yeah.
I cannot wait. As somebody who teaches their mom how to use computers, she's in Florida. If she has problems, I cannot wait for AI to start solving them, because that's got to be somebody else's problem at this point.
I hear you, Neil. I mean, just there was last winter, not this one, but last winter, our furnace broke down, the refrigerator, etc. We couldn't find the manuals. It was, yes, you can call somebody, of course, but then, are they the right person? Then they come, it wasn't the right model. So then it's, wait a second. I can have a little QR code on the bumping capabilities would be next generation, but even with a simple QR code, just solve me this problem. It's a furnace that I haven't checked in 10 years. I don't know where the manuals are. I can scan it, the virtual assistant comes up. How may I help you? Oh, what code are you seeing on the things? Like simple. The technology is here to do it. And we're working hard with the industry leaders in this different industry to make all these happen.
I love it, Diego. Wow, my mind is blowing up right now. We have learned so much in this last half hour. Like every conversation with you, we got a history lesson in the first 5 minutes, and then we know a lot more than we used to about.
I feel the same way with you guys.